I've seen plenty of people who are in it for the trophies, not in it for the love of the sport. And I think you somehow need to be in it for the love of the sport. And if you're in it for that, then at the end, sure, you might get some trophies.
You've unpacked a ton there, which I love.
You don't have to be a good salesperson. You just have to be a really strong...
Guys, welcome back to Built in America. I'm really excited to have Dennis here on the show. Dennis is the CEO of LaunchBrightly. He's actually a serial entrepreneur. He's built a lot of great companies and has served as a CEO for a long time. He's in the AI and SaaS space. Dennis, I'm so happy to have you on the show today.
Thanks much for having me. Appreciate it.
Dennis, what are you working on underneath the hood of your car today? What is going behind the big masterpiece that you're trying to build?
Those are grand words. So there's probably at least two schools of thought, right? For where some people like to attack a space, say travel, where the TAM is in the trillions of dollars and you can almost not fuck it up. And then other people, myself included, like to attack something so tiny that people immediately agree that's not a business. It's barely a product. I might agree it's a feature. If you can somehow make the feature nice, sure, you could charge somebody. Now, in that particular space, that's my disclaimer. I am working on this particular pain for where if you write some support documentation to your piece of software, it is probably 200-300 articles. They sit in Zendesk. You have a lot of good words. Each one of those comes attached with a set of screenshots of your application. Hey, this is how you do segmentation. Hey, this is how you set up two-factor authentication. Hey, this is how you work the table and so on and so forth. All of those screenshots, I guarantee you, in each one of these help centers will be out of date. Why? Because we've had so much progress on the engineering front. So that's just max velocity. We push to production multiple times a day across all our organizations. So that is just, and SaaS app that moves forward. Documentation, not so much. So we have this platform for where we can log in to your SaaS app, take all the screenshots in the right mode, right language, and so on and so forth, log into your Zendesk, check all of the images. If they're out of date, we'll update it. Instead of doing this as a half-yearly audit, we'll run it every night. So just one of those little things for where somebody right now called Tim sit at some SaaS company working on a set of screenshots that sits on his desktop. Just automate that shit. So that's us. Just got started, brought the team back together. We've been in that basement for a year and a half, just launched that first version some quarters back, signed the first customers. So everything is kind of super fucking romantic right now. We'll see. Maybe call it a year, but right now it's moving in the right direction. Very chuffed about it.
All right, Dennis, you're a Dane. You're from Denmark. You're a seasoned entrepreneur. This is not your first venture whatsoever. Just walk me back before you started this company. How did you come up with this idea, and what was the previous experiences that you had in the past that led you to this?
So you and me tonight at my apartment, a couple of beers, some pizza, we'll come up with 15 ideas. We'll believe 14 of them are killer ideas because we love kind of entrepreneurship. Come tomorrow, we'll be hacking away on it. That's the kind of easy part. I'm not so sure I believe that's a good way to go about it. Because falling in love with an idea, that comes very easy. If you're just slightly entrepreneurial, anything is just easy to fall in love with. You should probably do the opposite. So I keep this, what I call a list of hate. I go about my life, run my adventure, do whatever I need to do. And if there's something in the universe I think is off, slightly broken, or just utter shite, I take a note of it. I don't work on it, but I take this little baby of insight, put it on a list. Once I reach the end of some particular venture, then I go back, look at my list, which will now be a 5-year list of one-liners of one angry boy. I look at them. Half of them obviously just, Dennis, cheer up. That's not an issue. The other half, well, that seems like an issue. You obviously didn't like it. Are there other people out there, which there always is, that do not like this particular experience? And then I start to kind of work that particular list of hate into something a little bit more manageable. And then I have a whole process for where, well, how do you then discard ideas? You can kind of figure out what is the best of those that are on that list. But they're always rooted in what I believe is an original pain, because there's 40 ways to kind of solve it. Don't fall in love with any one of those. Fall in love with some original pain for where you certainly were the first one to experience it. So you have real intimate kind of knowledge about why you did not care. You can do plenty of interviews, right? You and me kind of interviews users all the time, but then you have to kind of assemble empathy for somebody else's pain. If you can somehow just have an innate understanding of it. And this was just one of those that I spotted for where I fucking hated the fact that we just pushed awesome software. And then if anything, we should oversell it. Like, hey, it's my job to make sure that I sell a version of the future, but my health sensor is a version of the past. Like, I'd rather have Figma screenshots in there that show what we might have in 4 months from now, not what we had like 3 months ago. So it's just one of those that ended up on my list many times. Sorry for the tirade, but that's kind of how I kind of get attached to something, a moment of pain.
I like that approach a lot. So you kind of went from a place of pain and a place of where your problems really lie, and then you build business out of that. How do you now bifurcate, solving problems versus actually having a passion about what you're doing? Because there's a lot of AI tools out there today that are, script writers. They can do your emails for you at this point. They solve good problems, but I don't know if you're always passionate about that too, right? And I think a lot of people today in entrepreneurship, like yourself, you built several companies. How do you define whether you want to go build something that you actually genuinely care about and you're passionate about for solving the actual problem at hand?
It's a really good question, right? For where I've seen plenty of people who are in it for the trophies, not in it for the love of the sport. And I think you somehow need to be in it for the love of the sport. And if you are in it for that, then at the end, sure, you might get some trophies, right? Because I'm just going to go train on my own because I kind of like it and it's fun. And sitting at Sunday night at 1 a.m., it's not a penalty. That's just out of sheer excitement. So I do think it's important that you somehow find yourself attached to something for where even if I was not paid to do this, I would probably do it anyway. There can be many aspects. Sometimes you're in love with the particular market, the particular user, the particular pain, but you should never be in love with kind of silly things like the particular technology or the particular solution that can change many times over. So I do like using my prior kind of methodology to really start with something for where, well, I cared. I could fall out of love at some point. Let's hope that does not happen. But it certainly started and was rooted in something for where I cared, like really cared. And do you know what? People always talk about founder-led sales. And I don't think there's anything else in the beginning. If you can't close that first in number of customers, then nobody can. And you don't have to be a good salesperson. You just have to be a really strong believer. And people can see that for where, well, he might not be super articulate. He's not really a good salesperson, but damn it, he believes. Like, if he believes that so strongly, that's either something which I am not seeing or I should just get on board. So that belief, I think, is just super important. And again, coming back full circle to your question, just get married to something for where you do care. A side note, I'm full of fucking side notes. So when we hire people, certainly throughout the last 3 ventures, we've had them sign some version of a pledge. At X.AI, our prior venture, the last line in that pledge was, I really do care. We had them sign it, by the way. Our lawyers kind of laughed themselves to sleep, as in, Dennis, this is not a legal document. You're a Muppet. I think you're a Muppet. As in, I don't think people stay put here because of the offer letter. We'll obviously pay them on time. I think they stay put for all sorts of other reasons. But I do really think you somehow need to assemble a band of people who care. And it starts with yourself.
Dennis, I played football for 20 years of my life, football meaning soccer in America. And a coach once told me that the name on the front of the jersey matters more than the name on the back of the jersey. We all know what that means, right? It's knowing that you are a servant leader for the team ahead. You have relentless passion about what you're building. How do you, as a CEO who's been a CEO of multiple companies, get everyone to think in that same fashion?
This is one of those items, right, for where there's not really many cheat codes. Some places in the organization, you can apply a cheat code to do something faster, cheaper, better. This is probably not one of them. And I think you have to be that example, as in whatever culture you believe you need to put in place, which another side note, you can't really decide. Plenty of people, and I've certainly been young and naive myself, and put in place a set of values that you would like people to kind of latch on to. And you thought because you wrote them on a piece of paper that they are now our values. No, those values will kind of be extracted from how you behave and what you can kind of extract from you into that kind of initial set of people. So I do think it's really just a matter of who you are and how you behave becomes a set of people who will look like you and behave like you. If you don't kind of like who you are, what you do, and how you behave, you can't really fake it. I remember, here's another funny side note. I had a few things I thought was not optimal when I had kids many moons ago. And like, Dennis, don't swear so much. Kind of clean up your language. And initially I did, but like 8 weeks in, I was thinking like, Dennis, you can't fake this for 18 years. Like, this is a long game, man. You can't fake it for 18 fucking years. Just be who you are. Or if you really think this is a defect, which is so bad, you just have to change. You don't fake it, just change. And I then figured out, well, this is me. Those defects are truly defects. Go change those. You can't fake it. Not long enough where it matters.
Dennis, you make a really good point. If someone's ever trying to change you for who you are as an individual, they're not going to get the best out of you, right? Because they should like Dennis for who Dennis is. Maybe you have some faults to yourself that you can go and modify. But if you're a swearing sailor Danish man who loves to operate AI tech SaaS companies, and that's the way you want to operate, and they want to turn you into some corporate private equity guy, you won't really last very long, right? I think people just have to appreciate that. So how do you, I've seen you've gone and hired people with family within your companies and you've incorporated them into your business. How do you go and assess that of, making sure you're bifurcating a family relationship versus, a business relationship and then growing companies simultaneously?
There's no single answer, right? We're all trying to kind of figure out how to make it work on our own. Here's one argument which many won't agree with, but I've tried to live to some success, which is that people talk about some work-life balance and the need of having to put that in place. And if not, you'll probably burn out at some point, probably sooner rather than later. I see that. But if you have to somehow aggressively create two buckets where the distinction between what you're doing now is either in one or the other bucket, I think you're not super fond of one of those buckets. So what you should probably do is figure out what is the one bucket which I can live in for where I'm happy and the people around me, which I care about, are also happy. So I've always tried to not have some sort of delineation between the two, meaning, well, I do think my kids should do their homework at the office. Or 3, I do think for these particular items, the first years, sure, my wife could probably work on that and be an employee of the company. Hey, this, you could probably hire your mom, that would be fine. And all of those things that would probably be warnings in somebody else's universe are for me items that I do deliberately. And they work very well because it's hard enough as is. So all day you're fighting on all fronts, as in trying to make your board happy, your kind of wider set of investors happy, your leadership team happy, your employees happy, the press happy, the market happy, your prime customers happy. Like you're just leaning in, hands up every day, 7 days a week. And then you get home, it's 8 o'clock. If you have to kind of do another 2 rounds, like, hey, I'm getting to the end here, man. So I do think you need some setting for where you don't get home and the company all of a sudden have become the enemy of what would otherwise, some people imagine, been a good family life. So I do think you have to kind of, again, I'm sure, I'm confident I'm either wrong or could be wrong here, but mash them together so that, well, as I get home, it's all the same. If I sit here at 11 p.m. and doing some work, well, it's all part of us as a single unit trying to achieve something that we agree to. So that's what I've done. And as a side note, before people say, sure, we roll the dice, tried it a couple of times, it kind of worked for you. I haven't done anything without kids. So I had my kids very early by accident. That's another funny story to that. But the whole thing worked out. Me and Liebke has been together for 30 years on December 3rd. So I've only done my ventures with kids, family, and what have you. It's the only version I know.
That's so awesome. So talk me through that a little bit, how your kids are involved in your companies. You're pretty humble. You've built 6 companies, sold 4 thus far. Tell me about how your kids have been incorporated into the companies. And secondly, let's walk through those companies that you've sold thus far as well.
The funny story is I did not want to be an entrepreneur. And there's a whole kind of separate discussion to be had on the whole nature versus nurture. So my dad, my uncles, cousins, wider family were entrepreneurs, not in tech, but in kind of traditional small business settings. So I've certainly had a front row seat to what it looks like to work 6 days a week, my dad falling asleep in front of the telly late at night. As in, it takes effort. So I certainly saw that. So all I wanted was just to get my computer science degree and go work for IBM. Like, I just assumed I would get my degree, take my bicycle, head out to IBM. So where's my desk? let's get started. But somehow the company which I worked for in university on the side, I did game development, and they went bankrupt. And out of sheer kind of, I don't know, disappointment, anger, what have you, I ended up buying the assets of that company, which sounds very kind of dramatic. It wasn't back then. So bought it on the cheap, sold it shortly thereafter. I really just bought the titles that I was working on with my buddies and made what I thought was a small fortune. It was not, but certainly, anything is a small fortune when at university, right? And the plan was, you know what? Let me take all this, put it on red, let it spin a couple of times, I'll lose it, then I go work for IBM. And we got started on this, what you would now not see any meaning in, but back in the mid-90s, you could start what would be called an internet company. As in, that would be the title. Just like today, you could almost say with a straight face, probably not much, but almost that you're running an AI company, right? Because there's some sort of term that could be attached to it. But that term was internet in the mid-90s. So we started something in the mid-90s. We're very fortunate to get an exit in April 2000 on that. So when people talk about the dot-com boom, for us, that was fireworks, because we got out on the right side, just at the very top. Just good karma, I guess. So we did log file analytics to a large degree at that particular venture. So what you would think of as Google Analytics on your website today, people didn't do JavaScript tagging back then. You kind of extracted your web server logs and tried to kind of extract meaning from that. And then we did a marketplace very similar to some sort of amalgamation of Seamless, Grubhub, and OpenTable back home. Obviously, perfect timing. We had one particular kind of flavor of it that was wrong. So that didn't work out. That turned out to be a very expensive MBA. I funded that myself of prior winnings. But it was obviously something where had I just been willing to kind of just fine-tune it ever so slightly. But I thought the particular idea that we had was good. We even had an opportunity to merge with what is now the biggest corporation in that particular space in the world today, which I declined because I thought we were better at it. We went tits up. After that, we did, again, kind of enterprise analytics, clickstream, kind of data kind of extracted from the browser, which is very geeky. We ended up writing our own file system, our own database, our own query language, so much so that we could run near real-time analytics back in 2008, 9. So that was pretty fantastic. Got acquired by Yahoo. After that, we did a predictive analytics venture. So helping CNN figure out, Fox or ABC or Le Monde or Time or the New York Daily News and so on and so forth, what particular story to carry in what particular position for how long, and when to kill it, what other story to put in that position on their homepage. So think of it as what Google is doing for their paid placement. We ran an internal auction for their internal inventory and ran that for 3 years, got acquired by Outbrain. And then after that, we did an AI company called X.AI. Mr. Musk is running with that domain today for about 5.5 years, trying to build an agent that could schedule meetings on your behalf. Did a lot of work on language, kind of just pre-LLM. And then, of course, LLMs came about. And just to give you some scope here, we had 101 people just on annotation, just to annotate data. And of course, today, Sam and Dennis tonight could spin up a couple of instances using OpenAI set of endpoints and probably do many things somewhat similar to what we did. But damn, we leaned in on trying to kind of just solve a corner of the language universe. They got acquired by Visible. And then the last year and a half, been at it with LaunchBrightly. So did 5 ventures before, had 4 good exits, one that didn't work. The one that didn't work was the one that I paid for myself. But outside of that.
All right, lot to unpack here. First and foremost, the XAI company is different than what Elon's operating today. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Is this a domain situation where you guys are sharing the same domain?
No, so he post-exit, shortly after the exit, he acquired the domain.
That's cool to know. He picked the right name.
Yeah. The funny thing is I bought that domain for next to nothing back in 2010, perhaps, and what's even better, I think I had like 4 single-letter AI domains because they didn't cost too much. It was pre any AI hype.
Yeah.
Let any of them just kind of go, kept one of them. And of course, now you can sell them for 7-8 figures. Elon certainly paid a pretty sum for it.
Yeah, you probably could have sold that domain just as much as you probably sold the company for at this point now, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy, but hey, funny stories.
I want to dive into two things. You've obviously learned how to really raise money, probably venture money to go back to these companies now. You've bootstrapped some of your companies as well.
Mhm.
Talk to me about how, if I'm listening to this podcast today, I want to go raise money for a venture tech AI startup today. What's the best route of going about doing so if I don't have the experience that you have today?
Which is a good point. So once you get to that first exit in some capacity, what you get is this magical entrepreneurial card that you can use for many things. It'll open many doors. As in, you can use it to find co-founders, initial employees, investors, and what have you. But how do you get that initial card? And that's the question. I do think of people which I chat to, many of them make the mistake of over-investing into a story about what they have, not what they could become. And no investor is really that interested in what you have. What you have is really just a proof point or a metric of the likelihood of you being able to become what you tell me you could become. And that part of the story is certainly one that I've honed over the years, for where I've been able to create a picture so vivid of an island you and me could live on in the future that people could also imagine that particular island. And there's no need in pitching anybody anything if they don't want to be on that island with you. Now, if we can get to agreement that that island exists and somebody should kind of paddle out there, it's going to be very dangerous. Probably most won't make it. I probably won't make it. But if you can agree at least on the island, good. That's half, if not most, the sale of trying to get an investment. Then the only question is, and I'm putting that in big ass air quotes here, is, am I the one to take us there? I don't want to invest any time and energy in trying to persuade you into anything if you don't want to live in the same place as me. So that part of the story is pretty much all of my pitch. For that, you really need many, if any, slides, because if you can't even paint a picture where they close their eyes and imagine it, some sort of utopia, cool. Now that you can also see it, let me almost pitch it backwards. So what steps do we need to take to get there? It'll take multiple steps, multiple rounds, multiple kind of near death, if not full on sudden death experiences, for we just won't make it. But you need to be able to see the island, see the steps, and sure, there'll be some elasticity in that, but I can certainly envision it. And then we come down to, so why you? Well, let me tell you what we've done that serves as a very good proof point for why we're taking some early steps, and they can kind of catapult me to the next step. That's the one part, the island. The next one is having a good understanding of what is it that you're selling them, that initial pre-seed seed round. You're not selling them an exit on money or cash flow. You're selling them a probability of you closing an A round. So don't try to sell them all sorts of other things. Just be upfront and honest about, this is where I'm at. This is where I need to be at that particular next step. Can we agree on the next step? If we can't agree on the next step, then we can't find the probability. But if we can agree on the next step, which could be any number of kind of technical advancements, MRR, other things that we together deem important enough to have reached that particular milestone, then we can talk about what amount of money do I need to have in place to get to this. As in, hey, you want me to kind of swim from here to there on no energy? That's not, hey, even I don't believe that. I said, that's not going to be a 500K endeavor. It's going to be more like a $4 million endeavor. Okay, then we can discuss that. And if you have that in place, I think you're in good shape.
You unpacked a ton there, which I love. So much to cover there. What caught me most is you are selling the dream of where you can go rather than where you are today. When you first raised your first amount of capital for your first venture studio, where exactly were you explaining yourself to an investor? And then what did you exactly sell them for that specific company?
So the first amount of money we raised in the US without any network or anything, nobody called for where, hey, remember, I took some money from you in the past and I sent you more money back. So let's start with that story and that'll get me in the door. So just pretty much blank. Arrived from Europe and had to kind of figure out, okay, where's the lead list to this? And in that particular venture for where we did predictive analytics, I tried to paint a picture of a newsroom different to the newsroom that we had today, and wasted inventory. And just as a side note to that, how do you become a believable observant to what is going on, if not embedded in the industry yourself, which is why many industry insiders can certainly kind of accelerate some of these discussions because you are the expert. So to do that, we moved in with the New York Daily News. I sat next to the editor-in-chief for a year. So don't talk to me about what that looks like. I know exactly what this looks like. I know exactly where they fail. I know exactly what they can do better. So you need to somehow have a believable backdrop for why what you say could be true. Not just fantasy, but a believable backdrop. And we had this kind of analogy for where there was a time pre-Bloomberg terminals where I lived right across the exchange, where people would just run around with pieces of paper in hand, trying to do pretty much deals, right? Buy and sell directly on the floor. Then one day a Bloomberg terminal arrives and most of it kind of changes. Today, the analogy worked very well for where the editor-in-chief would have kind of 3, 4, 5 meetings a day with their kind of particular editors, make a set of choices. There was no Bloomberg terminal. We wanted to be that Bloomberg terminal for that particular vertical. And people could start to kind of both see it and believe in it. And that became kind of the kind of shorthand for that picture of the island. I said, I think Dennis is working on that Bloomberg terminal for the news industry. I see that. Yeah, why doesn't that exist? Yeah, he saw something. He's working on it. He's got these kind of early kind of signals. I want to see him kind of make that happen. And we did. We ended up with probably 80% of the top 150 news destinations. As in, that's not a newsroom I've not been in the world. As in, whether that is in India or in Denmark or in France or across the US. As in, that's not a newsroom I haven't seen to kind of make that story. And it worked very well. We ran that venture for 1,057 days from inception to exit. Do you know what? It just fits so well. We should probably have kept it. But it fits so well for where almost immediately, or another interesting side note, right? That's this kind of inflection point in your venture for where you move away from selling to you supporting people buying. And it's very kind of visible. You can feel it when it happens. Very early on, you're actively selling what you have. Sometimes you even have to kind of both describe the particular pain, then describe the particular solution, have them agree, have some sort of construct in place for where they can get on board. But then you cross into some other territory later on where you have enough recognition, penetration, what have you, for where now people are buying it. You just need to put in place a very good buying process.
Those are huge points. I think, Dennis, you have a wealth of experience and you also are a massive visionary. And I can tell you're able to craft a story very well, which I think what makes a unique entrepreneur is being a very good storyteller to go attract the best people around you, whether it's capital, people, whatever it may be. And you have that. That it factor is very unique. What do people have misunderstood about building tech companies today that don't have your vision? Because I think a lot of tech guys are more or less not as, how should I say this, as visionary as you per se. They look at things from a data quantitative perspective rather and aligning up numbers and making sure those numbers line up rather than you just putting out the picture and selling the dream. But you being able to go translate that from a more quantitative perspective rather than just such a linear perspective that many tech and quantum physics guys go about doing. Tell me about that, how in the tech space, what is very misunderstood from many founders in that sector today?
I think it's important to underline the point of any founder or even just founding team, probably even early employees as well, are all in the business of selling. So another side note. So early on, 20 and less, there can only be 2 types of people. You're either a seller or you're a maker. And if you're not any one of those 2, you probably don't belong here. And you need to know exactly who you are. And if you're slightly embarrassed about being in the seller bucket, I don't think you understand the game. Now, as a founder, you are profoundly, even as an engineer, even if you push code, you're in the seller bucket. You're selling everybody. And that should not make you uncomfortable. It should make you excited. And I'm always a little skeptical of 4 guys who got together out of some computer science program from some very nice university, where none of them can either accept that they are the seller of the group and or they probably all need to be sellers in some capacity. And could even naively believe that's a role which we can go find for. There must be some MBA out there which we can attach to this. That is your job, however uncomfortable. And it's not that many people, when I say you're in the seller bucket, they immediately kind of translate that into, so I'm an SDR now. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that you have some dream or some version of a future we could all live in. If you cannot articulate that and do it so excitingly that people are being sold on it, that is not necessarily you selling in the kind of traditional sense where, well, where's my script? Where's the 50 calls I need to today? That's not the point. The point is that this particular story you have to repeat over and over again and be excited about it.
Dennis, if you're hiring me today to come on your next venture in the event that you want me to stay to the finish line, let's say it's 4 years from now, what's one piece of advice you give me today that would allow me to know that I should be part of this journey for the next 4 years?
Like many things in an interview, the best questions are the questions that you cannot ask. I say, I can't ask you, are you committed? Or are you willing to apply the effort that we both can imagine is needed? As in all of the good questions that I can ask, you can only kind of say yes to where there's no value. So you have to kind of figure out what else can I ask? Or what other activities can I do? So I somehow get at least an idea of what the answer might look like. And again, plenty of people in HR or recruiting will tell you how hard this is. Here's the thing that I've come up with. I'll give you a few. I've always had all of my co-founders buy their stock. As in, oh, Sam, you want you and me to do a venture? Let's put in a few monies and we'll find some amount. But I want some amount where Sam goes to Citibank, looks at his savings account, takes out an amount which is not the end of the world, but slightly uncomfortable, so that Sam truly has skin in the game. And that works well. The amount of money rarely does anything to the venture itself. Then we'll raise some sort of seed round. The amount of money kind of just doesn't really matter anymore, but still you have skin in the game. As in, I want this to succeed. There was a morning where I was at Citibank taking out taxed dollars from my account to this fucking venture, and we're about to die. I need to apply myself. So that's something worked very well. And you'll see plenty of people where you'll pick some amount. Say they've never done any venture before. They've kind of been a salaried employee. There's only so much which you can extract from that. So they'll perhaps have 140K savings or some amount, depending on where in the world you sit and kind of your circumstance and so on and so forth. Okay, writing a 60K check is not really going to turn this venture, up or down, but it'll leave you a financial scar you'll remember throughout all of the years.
Dennis, you're a smart cat. You want people to share pain with you if you're going to start a venture together, because when you share the same pain, people can really understand each other. And secondly, you put mind games on people to put them under a level of stress, so you start understanding how does that person react when they're stressed out. They always say this notion of you don't know someone until you go travel with them or you live with someone, right? Because then you start finding out their mannerisms. You're doing the same way, but just compressing that time within a 2-hour interval. Because that's ultimately what you're trying to find in people as soon as possible, because it's all roses and dandy in the beginning. And you don't want to see the roses and dandy. You want to see the actual shits that come out of these people when things are stressed out. I actually amend that. I think more people need to go do that when hiring great talent, because again, oftentimes people get this wrong. They're looking at all the accolades, where they went to school, but they're not testing those characteristics that matter most. So I think what you're doing here is fantastic, Dennis. I know we only have a few minutes left. I know you got to get going as well. Dennis, where can people find out more about you, your company, and what you're working on today?
So anybody doing any SaaS product in any capacity are forced to support it. You support it on some domain called help.yourcompanydomain.com or what have you. Those articles are chock full of screenshots. I can help you automate those screenshots. I would love to talk to you about that. LaunchBrightly.com. That's the commercial part. Me personally, Dennis Mortensen, everywhere on the internet. Happy to chit chat. I am very promiscuous. If it's anything entrepreneurial, I'm very easy to get hold of. If it's not entrepreneurial, a little harder. But as soon as it kind of leaves a taste of startup, I get sucked right in. So easy to get hold of in that regard.
Dennis, it's been awesome having you. I might have to take you up on that offer as well. So let's stay in touch and appreciate you being on the podcast today.
Cheers.